Teachers at Reddit, what amusing family secrets did you accidentally learn from your overly talkative students? 8th grader. Excitedly. MRS. Rosita. Guess what I found out? My grandpa was a Nazi. Me. Do you know what a Nazi is? 8th grader. No. Me. Maybe you should go talk to your mom about that. She came in the next day and went, yeah, my mom told me I can't tell people about my grandpa anymore. I used to do science programming for kids. In the middle of a library summer reading program, I picked a little girl, probably about 4-5 years old, to come up and be my volunteer for a magic trick, which then you explained the science of after it was done. I asked what her name was. She said it into the mic. Zero shyness in front of approximately 200 kids and adults. I asked if she had ever heard of the trick we were going to do and she said, nope. My favorite dinosaur is a triceratops. And I like your shoes. My dad is back there. Hi dad, but my mom couldn't come tonight because she got a shot in her butt and can't sit on the hard chairs this place has. Dad, and all the other adults in the audience, were dying. I had a child once playing on the tire swing. He was a very serious kid and he looked me dead in the eye and said how much he liked the swing at daycare and how when he grew up he wanted to have a swing just like his mummy and daddy did in their bedroom. Looking his parents in the eye that day telling them he had a good day and keeping silent was difficult. If someone in your family is pregnant and you've told your child, I already know. Worked at an after-school program run by the IMCA. And had a 4th grader explain to me in detail how her sister was also her cousin. Edit. They had the same dad and their moms were sisters. So half siblings through dad and first cousins through moms. Having a 9-year-old run you through that is quite a trip. My daughter's kindergarten teacher told me about how one child entertained them at show and tell with a complete report on the new alarm system in their house including the code and where the keypad was located behind the curtains. Kudos going out to all the teachers for glossing over the home stuff they learn. My sister wrote in her daily journal in grade 1 that our parents had a shower together the night before. Teacher wrote what a great way to save water. Here's a cute and light-hearted Oniasari had a girl stay for some help after school one day. At the time I was teaching geometry, 10th grade, in a mostly Hispanic school. She told me about growing up in Peru until about the age of 10 or so. I can't remember the exact age she told me. She was telling me that she worked with her uncle sometimes on the weekend. I asked what kind of work. So many of our kids worked construction with their families. He's a clown. I'm his DJ. That really gave me a smile. We were talking about calling 911. But what a real emergency is. This is tricky with 10-year-olds because you want to use real emergency examples but not freak them out. One kid. So if your mom gives birth in the kitchen, that's an emergency. Sure enough, mom picks him up with his baby brother who was born last week in their kitchen. 4th grade. A student on Zoom the other day asked why another student had been gone a few weeks. And we all heard his mom in the back yell, "Boy, that is none of your damn business." Before he muted. I almost burst laughing but I held my composure. I did a placement once and students had to talk about what they would do with $1 million. One kid gets up in front of the class and goes, "My mum said if she had $1 million, she would buy lots and lots and lots and lots of weed." One of my students once said, "Mummy wants to know if you want to come round for tea because daddy is away at work." The mother couldn't look at me for weeks on the playground. Cause I think she heard her daughter ask me. While I taught 4th grade, I had a kid tell me that his dad works on car rims at night. Another one told my friend, the bilingual teacher, that she came back from visiting family in Mexico over the weekend by going through the river. Edited to add. Another one. I taught the son of a 2nd grade teacher. He came in one weekend talking about drinking lots of kid beer over the weekend at his dad's house. His mom stopped by later and I mentioned the story. She shook her head and said, "It's apple juice." I keep telling his dad to stop calling it kid beer. Thanks for the awards. These are my very first ones. Okay. So not a teacher, but in grade 9 there was a girl who got completely plastered in the girls' bathroom. And my 14-year-old self had one too many slushies at lunch, so I ran into her there. This girl's makeup was a complete mess, and since I was at the peak of social anxiety problems, I just tried to slip away. As usual, I was too late and this girl clung to my arm and fell apart sobbing to me about how her boyfriend had gotten her mother pregnant. I ended up missing the rest of the day to sit in the corner of the bathroom with this girl I had never met before in my life. And we never talked again. But man. Used to teach pre-kindergarten. I had one kid who would tell me every month when her mom was on her period. MRS. My mom is bleeding from her butt again. At least. I had a Japanese student whose family had formed a music band that practiced in their basement routinely. Unfortunately, I did not get to witness this awesomeness. Several years ago, I did a brief stint teaching junior high. I now teach high school. In that time, I learned a lot of information from students that, I'm sure, parents would prefer I had not learned. The one that stands out the most to me was the boy who accidentally let it slip to the entire class that dad has a small penis. The bell hadn't rung to start class yet. So I was letting the kids, 7th grade, be a little crazy and get some of their pent-up energy out before we began class. I hear one boy say to another, "Shut up. You'll always have a tiny dick." The kid, in a moment of suicide by words, just said, "I've seen my dad naked. He's tiny." You're probably right. Thank God the bell rang and I was able to move the kids onto their actual lessons. It was my own child actually. My husband had just quit smoking and my daughter was in kindergarten, had proceeded to go and tell everybody that her father had quit doing drugs. Tobacco equals drugs. I had quite a number of co-workers and parents come asking me if everything was okay at home. A bit different but nonetheless hilarious. My stepbrother was in kindergarten and his teacher overheard him say to about 5 other kids, "I've been to hell and back and let me tell you, it's scary." I wasn't a teacher, but I used to have a small farm with the usual farm animals. I also went to schools and brought along animals and educated the class on animal care, etc. I always invited elementary school classes to come take a tour of the farm and entertain the children. Every year the teachers took me up on the offer. At the time I also had several animals up in the house, including a few squirrel monkeys. One of them was really old and she had no teeth. A young boy in the 2nd grade was laughing and playing with that older monkey while I talked to the class that surrounded the monkey cages. The old monkey was gumming his finger and he couldn't stop laughing. Finally the little boy said, "Hey Jacob, come here and let her bite you. It feels just like grandma." And while showing them the possum I was bottle feeding back to health. A little boy said he had a bunch of them in his bedroom closet. Just the usual farm animals. You know. I don't think this is a secret, but as I was waiting for the class to start, I sat at the back and this girl turned to me and started telling me about how her mom fell on her ass while she was in the shower and hadn't showered for days after the injury because she couldn't do it. Not me. But my husband has a student whose mom has a massive crush on him. She tells him all the time about how her mom primps before they do anything online, so she can lean in and say hi to him. My best friend is dating a male teacher. Anyway, he told me that when he was in school he was explicitly warned against dating any of the moms. Apparently single moms might see male teachers as dependable with a good job and then attempt to date them. And this is a common enough occurrence that the professor warned him about it. 2 girls in middle school were next door neighbors and always marveled about how much they looked alike. Things have been pretty depressing recently. So here's a funny one. A kid in one of my classes told me that they learned that Santa isn't real. And in fact, it's actually their parents eating the milk and cookies. But, as they said, it's not right, they have to make the milk and cookies and eat it. They cook for me and I eat it. So I learned how to make cookies and pour milk now. So wholesome. They told me they have a younger sibling. And they're going to keep making milk and cookies for Santa until their sibling gets older and they'll teach them how to do it too. Here's a quick one from my wife, the grade 3 teacher. Daddy had to sleep on the couch last night because mommy found out about his girlfriend. I was walking a new student to IT and they happily shared the story of his fat cousin who is wanted by the sheriff because he's behind in his child support. The fat cousin is fat because he drinks energy drinks and not water, and he doesn't pay child support because he doesn't like kids. Fat cousin also smells a bit like cheese and his feet have long toenails. And so on and so forth until we arrived at the IT office. That their mom eats sugar with her nose. I was discussing homophones with 3rd graders and we were considering the words fair, what they mean and how they're spelled. I was sure we had exhausted all the meanings. Fair weather. Playing fair. Bus or taxi fare. Etc. I thought we had it covered. But no. Heather knew one more. You know. Fair. When your mom has a fare and your dad finds out and gets really mad about it. I'm not often speechless. But that left me floundering for a moment. Sadly. Those parents were divorced before the end of the school year. I had a kid bring candy from his dad doesn't drink anymore meetings. Edit. Had a student at my school proudly show his teacher the $5 his uncle gave him to pee in a cup for him. When my daughter was in kindergarten, I was at a parent-teacher conference. And the teacher said something about my daughter's little sister dying. Apparently my child wrote a lovely story about her little sister dying and the trashman taking her away. My daughter is my youngest child. I had my tubes tied after she was born. There was never a little sister. Boy's mom hit his stepdad in the head with a bat after he had hit her. Knocked him out cold in the kitchen. He was not arrested because he took off to Mexico and now mom is not paying for his papers to come back. Edit. Left out a crucial part of the story. Me. That's a beautified dress. Student. Student. Thank you. My mother says it's a bitch to iron. I once had a student explain to me that all his neighbors were mad at his dad. I asked him why. Kid goes on to tell me his dad had started a fire for insurance money and lit the whole carport on fire. Many cars were lit on fire that night. I have a kindergartner whose dad died about a year ago. She doesn't quite understand where he went, so sometimes when other kids bring up their dad she talks about him. A couple times she said she misses him and says he's on a trip. Sometimes she says he's coming home tomorrow. I only met her mom once so I don't know the situation, but I don't blame her for not knowing how to explain death to a 5-year-old. Sorry, I know that's sad. But I work in a low-income area. I have lots of sad stories. In 1st grade, we had to make daily journal entries. I wrote we went to Orlando for a week. My mom was trying to light her cigarettes and almost drove our car over a cliff. My teacher wrote A++. My mom was not as pleased. That my many students from the same family, same father and last name, had a good reason for looking nothing alike. Dad was in a polyamorous relationship with 3 different women. On interview night he would show up in the family minibus. Edit. This is in Eastern Canada. Mormonism was not involved. On a class field trip to the fire department, I once had a chronic blurter patiently raise her hand as the fireman went around and answered questions. While pointing at the fire pole, she shared with the entire group, including several parent volunteers, that her mommy and daddy have one of those in their bedroom. Following up with reassurance that she isn't allowed to play on it. I teach 1st grade. One of my students once ran back into class after using the restroom and proudly announced nobody go into the boys' bathroom. I pooped and it smells just like my dad's bathroom after he eats Chinese food. 2 girls in the same class. Different moms. Same dad. He got each woman pregnant within a month. All 3 parents came to parent-teacher conferences together and got along great. Best case scenario for those girls. I teach preschool. One day my kids were pretending to have a restaurant and were also writing, aka scribbling, each other's orders. One older kid was actually learning to write and would ask me how to spell food items. He came up to me and said, "How do you spell whiskey?" I asked why he wanted to spell that. "That's my dad's favorite drink," he told me. I told his mom cause I thought it was funny. But unfortunately this fact was related to why her and dad weren't together anymore. Edit. I have another one. I had a little girl tell me every day for like a month that her mommy had a baby in her tummy. I knew that her mom didn't want more kids for the time being, so we laughed about it all the time. One day, mom comes to pick up and I'm like, "Oh man. Your daughter was talking about the new baby again." Mom tells me that she actually took a test the day before and it was positive. Student 1. MRS. Cucaracho. Did you meet your husband in a bar? Me. No, we met on a boat during a field trip for my marine biology class. Student 1. Oh, because my mama finds all her boyfriends at the bar. Student 2. Your mama is skanky. Then chaos as the class wants to joke about who has the skankiest mom. My friend used to teach preschool kids. One thing that really hit her was when one of the kids asked her, "Can you be my mom instead?" I was essentially that child but knew the teachers couldn't save me. Former teacher, our first graders had take-home iPads. One kiddo also had a family iPad with an identical case. They accidentally, brought in their family iPad, which had a video of his parents having sex on it. He showed the video to 8-10 other kids before we caught it. Same kid also came to school wearing a bracelet a few months later. It was a cock ring. Not a teacher, but the parent. When my, now teenage, daughter was young, I had a roommate who smoked pot before it was legal here. One time they left out their bowl and my child saw it and decided to draw it for art class the next day. Needless to say, the conversation with the teacher was interesting the next day. One day when I was super hungover, a young student told me, "You smell like daddy." I learned one of my students, 3rd grade, was being beaten with a brass strip. It was one of those thin ones you use between rooms whenever one is like carpet and one is hardwood. She beat him in a time he did something she didn't like. He had huge scars and welts across his back. Called DCFS to report it. She had 17 founded cases of child abuse against her when I called. She killed him about 2 years later with a razor. DCFS never did a single thing and we go to jail if we do anything. The joys of working in a city Chicago. That mom and dad don't share a bed anymore because dad snores. Mom works with my wife and she's not so subtly boinking someone else. In 1st grade I would tell all my friends and the teacher how much my daddy loves beer. He drove a truck with beer on it. There was beer stuff all over the house. He loves beer. My dad worked for Budweiser as a driver and would often get stuff through the magazine. I still don't know all that much. But I had a really cool Casey Kane Budweiser hood over my bed. I once had 2 students at recess get into a fist fight because one's dad snitched on the other's dad to the cops. Pretty sure it was over drugs. Both dads ended up in jail eventually. I felt bad for the kids. Because they were really good friends before this. Not a teacher, but there is a kid in my grade who would claim to have heard his parents having sex. He would come in the next day and tell his friends about it. This went on throughout middle school. Friend of mine said his wife and him were eating popcorn with their kids while watching a movie when his wife suggested they sneak off to the bedroom. After starting to get hot and heavy, they realized the kids were sitting on the floor watching them while they munched on popcorn. I don't think I would call it cute. Just mature. I am a bus driver and he started riding my bus in January. She noticed I was knitting a glove on my dashboard and asked who it was for. I told her it was for my daughter, Lucy. She asked if Lucy has any brothers or sisters. I told her that Lucy was going to have a little brother. But he didn't make it. He went on to tell me, That happened to my mom too. It was really hard on her. That was maybe the most mature conversation I've had with anyone in 2021. I came to find out later that he is 9 years old. She went on to tell me how mac and cheese is her favorite food. Mommy and daddy like to take naps in their rooms in the middle of TV time. As a celebrated napper, this would be nothing more than the straight truth. Stick me in a recliner and lights out. Zoom school has brought a lot of me seeing parents in their underwear. One child couldn't figure out how to turn the camera around on his device, so he brought it to his mom. She was on the toilet. She was also on her laptop on the toilet. I don't think she noticed, but I had to disable his camera quickly so no one else saw. The neighbor is real friendly. He comes over every time daddy leaves to keep my mom company in the bedroom. Worked in an inclusive preschool for a bit, and many of our students were non-verbal or limited verbal. We brought in green limeade with snack one day, and one of little boys, who could barely speak 20 words, shouts "It's a margarita" at the top of his lungs. It was the first full sentence he had ever said. It was amazing. And we laughed so hard and he loved it. His verbal abilities started rapidly increasing afterwards. But we all knew what mommy did at home. If your limited verbal child can name a margarita, that means they're seeing a lot of margaritas. More discomforting than amusing, but third grader is jokingly rhyming words with muck to describe the weather outside. Outside is mucky. It's yucky. It's ducky. It's why. Immediate reaction. Claps her hand over her mouth and looks embarrassed. Definitely an accident. No penalty. But then outside the kids start discussing which curse words they know. Rut said the F word. Well, I know the B word. Yeah, I know the B word. What about the C word? There's no C word. Yeah. Crap. Crap's not a C word, etc. A conversation everyone can remember having as a kid. And they're now very loud. Very talkative. Moderately oversharing kid jumps in. Did you know there's an M word? My mom, a judge, says it at home all the time. Even my little brother knows it, and that's how I know it's a bad word, even though she says it cause he said it once at the grocery store and we got yelled at by a lady. And then of course they ask her what the N word is, and that's when we jump in. Not a teacher but the parentus. My child in 2nd or 3rd grade told one of her friends that she saw mommy and daddy lick their private areas. Then she went outside to the neighbors and saw the neighbor killing his wife. Friend went to the teacher and daughter explained it all again. For the record, she's never seen us do that. We always lock the door for fun times. And I'm fairly certain our neighbor didn't kill his wife, but now that I think about it, our neighbor's wife did vanish us. Needless to say, we got a phone call for that one. And I'm pretty sure we are on a list. Ha. Reminds me of the time my daughter, age 4, told the neighbor that I had escaped from jail and not to tell anyone or they would take me back. She went into great detail as to how I stole the keys from the guard. She was very convincing. I've learned many disturbing. One amusing one was a boy I teach prec said his mom and dad got a new mom, so now he has 2 moms and they all live together. Imagine having that child care ratio. Though 3 adults to 1 kid? I have a suspicion that polyparenting is way underrated. Was subbing for 6th grade at a school where the kids all knew me. A boy comes up and says that his mom threatens to handcuff him and his brother if they are bad. He then says that he knows she can do it because she keeps 2 really strong pairs in her nightstand. He again said they are not the flimsy toy ones either. The real strong ones. Oh, the innocence of youth. My sister was a biology teacher. She gave PTC genetic taste testing strips. IDK how it went exactly. But one of her favorite students thought it was so cool she got some strips for her family. Everyone in her family tasted it but her. Then she tried it on her grandparents. All were tasters. She did some research, came to some conclusions, and found out that she was born from an affair. The show and tell the LDO was rather amusing. He thought it was some sort of cooking implement. I was in kindergarten and told a story about how my actual mom died and that my mom isn't my real mom. My mother was alive and well. She learned this after a conference with my teacher.